I'll be introducing Chris Setti, who is CEO of the Greater Peoria Development Council. It's the public-private organization that helps drive economic growth here in our region. Chris joined the EDC in 2018 after 12 years of a career with the city of Peoria, where he served in a variety of roles, including the Director of Economic Development. And he was the Assistant City Manager. And he chose not to be the city manager. That was his choice. Chris has a bachelor's degree from the University of Notre Dame and a master's degree from the University of Colorado, Denver in public administration. Chris and his wife, Dr. Eileen Setti, who many of you may know, have two mostly grown children, daughters, and they've called Peoria home since 2003. So let's welcome Chris.
So as a graduate of the University of Notre Dame, I really only know one Irish song, and it's the fight song, but I won't, won't make you sing it. So thank you very much, Kurt, and thank you very much for the opportunity. I think the fact that only 2 people left early, is that a good sign or a bad sign? I don't know, maybe nobody usually leaves and 2 people thought it was worth it to pay money to not listen to me speak. But I do really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, and I really love Rotary groups. My wife is actually a member of Downtown, so you can't hold that against me. I'm a Cubs fan, if that helps balance things out.
Nope.
With Jim Barrett. Jason's not. But it's great actually to look across the room here. I know probably 30-40% of you. So I very much appreciate the role of that Rotary plays in our community and all service clubs. I remember years ago, and it's probably been 30 years since I had to read this book, probably longer if I had to read it, because it's been at least 30 years since I've been out of college, is the work by Robert Putnam, a book called Bowling Alone. It was written sometime in the late 80s or the 90s about the popularity of bowling, but the decline in the number of people who are in bowling leagues. And the idea behind that was that we have become and at that time had become a more individual and less cooperative I think he was limiting it to the nation, but maybe even as the world. That people were doing things, but they weren't doing them together. And it was kind of the decline of fraternal and sororital organizations and those kind of community organizations. You all are bucking the trend. And Rotary, and I'm very impressed by how strong Rotary is in the Peoria area. I thought, oh, this is not a singing Rotary, and then I got up here and sang, because I went once to a Rotary in Pekin, and they all said, now bring out your songbooks, and people started singing, and I thought that was not what I was expecting out of a Rotary club. So thank you for what you do, both individually and collectively, because I know how important Rotary is to our community, and some of the charitable work you do, work with students. I'm a proud dad of 2 Richwoods graduates. And the causes that you support. So thank you very much. You are what makes this community great. And this has been my adopted hometown. I'm from Los Angeles, California. Actually, I'm from Burbank, California. But I only lived there for 18 years. I lived in Peoria for 23 years. So what do I think of when I think of home? I actually now think of Peoria as home. So I've got hopefully I only have 10 minutes or so of talking to you, and then I love actually answering questions, because I've spent the last 20 years of my life answering tough questions from people who don't like the city or the state or me or the project that I'm working on, and I've faced tough crowds and I've faced easy crowds, but I really do love talking about this community, one that as I just said, is really one I call home. And that's the answer to the question, how does a kid get from Los Angeles area to Peoria? Well, first you make your way out west, or out east, I should say, and I went to the University of Notre Dame, and then you meet a girl and fall in love with her, and she's from Peoria. And even though she tells you, I don't want to live in Peoria, and you tell her, that's okay, I don't know where Peoria is. When we were living in Chicago, you find your way here, and I've loved every minute of it since. So I am the CEO of the Greater Peoria Economic Development Council, an organization that has been around for 44 years in one version of itself or another. We have been by different names. Our birth name is actually the EDC Inc., the Economic Development Council for the Peoria area. And when we have to write that out sometimes on things. And I always have to ask my office manager, what is our name again? But we've been going by the Greater Peoria Economic Development Council for about the last dozen years, because this is Greater Peoria. And that is sometimes unpopular to say if I'm speaking to a crowd from Morton or Pekin or elsewhere. But I actually introduce myself to you as somebody from Los Angeles, but I'm not from Los Angeles, I'm from Burbank. And that's the way we think about this. And I want to talk about the role of a regional economic development organization. There's a lot of groups that are involved in economic development. You've probably heard from a couple of them over the years. I actually spoke to this Rotary Club. The last time I spoke to this Rotary Club, you were all on Zoom, because I believe it was like maybe June of 2020. So some of your faces I remember like this. Economic development is a very broad topic, and there's lots of different things that go on in economic development, from the visitor economy that might be handled by the Tourism Bureau or the Discover Peoria, by our chambers of commerce who do work on kind of business to business opportunities, to local economic development, which I used to run for the city of Peoria. So local economic development, run usually by municipal organizations, sometimes by a private entity, are really focused, just like you might think, on local stuff: housing, retail, sometimes tourism, or like the development of entertainment or hospitality industry. Regional economic development is a little different. And I will tell you that it took me a little bit, because for a decade plus, my whole job at the city of Peoria was to fight for only things that would happen in the city of Peoria. And to heck with you if you were moving your business to East Peoria. They were the enemy, right? And it was. That's the way I thought sometimes, very narrowly. So then I had to go be the regional guy, and all of a sudden, like, oh, I have to first of all, I was allowed to eat in East Peoria and Morton and Washington, and places I was just never allowed to spend my money, because my boss would be like, I saw you crossing the bridge, and why would you eat at that place over there? So that, I was liberated in that regard. But the recognition of the value of regional economic development. And if you think about the types of businesses that we have in our community, there are generally two types. There's kind of a squishy middle. But there's companies, businesses, like the one we're in here at Barracks Cater-In, that 90 to 95% of your customers on any given day are people who live in this region, which is great. Then there are companies like Caterpillar or Komatsu that make machines that aren't even sold in North America. We, as a regional entity, focus on the latter, because we recognize that, first of all, place matters less than the fact that they're here. So there's not as many fights over like where something might go, on what side of the river, and what municipality, and what county. That's what keeps me sane and keeps my investors from pulling the plug. But also, we need companies that bring dollars in from outside of the community, because if all we did was just recycle our own dollars within the community, there wouldn't be as much to go around. So we need the companies like Komatsu or Caterpillar or others that are bringing in dollars from outside the community and selling things. We work on that ladder. In the middle, the squishy middle of this, if you imagine this Venn diagram, are companies like construction, healthcare, legal, banking, where we have a great healthcare system that actually does bring in a lot of people from outside the region. My wife works for Ronald McDonald House. You don't have a Ronald McDonald House if you have just people who are in your community, because you don't get to stay at Ronald McDonald House if you live within 30 miles of here. It's a symbol of how important it is for the healthcare is to our region. So very broadly, so we're a public-private organization. We are funded about a third. 1/3 from public sector investment, our counties and our cities, our villages. 1/3 from our private sector. Tend to be the larger companies: Caterpillar, OSF, Carl, SEFQ, banks, construction companies, any of the kinds of companies that you get, utilities, railroads, that you can think that they see the upside of a stronger regional economy. They don't think of these things as transactional. If they invest in us at $5,000 a year. They're not expecting to be able to draw a bright line to $5,000 worth of business. Hopefully they'll see a dotted line to $50,000 worth of business. So those are the kinds of companies. And then we get a lot of grant and program revenue that we're able to do specific types of work or support specific areas of our programs. We generally have 5 areas of program that I'll just briefly touch on. The one, and it's the more unique, is our planning efforts. We are an economic development planning agency, which is a little interesting in the world of economic. It's only maybe interesting to me, by the way. I don't expect it to be interesting to you. But there are entities in the country that just do economic development planning, along with other sorts of planning. So if anybody knows anybody that works at the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission, Ray Lees, who I think is a member of Downtown Rotary, is big with Tri-County Regional Planning. Oftentimes, economic development planning will fall in their bucket. But in this case, and we're one of the only ones that does it, it falls in our organization. We cover 5 counties: Peoria, Woodford, Tazewell, those are the easy ones; Mason and Logan, which are the harder ones, depending on if you know where Logan, most of you drive to Logan at least, because that's where Lincoln is. Many of you may never have even stepped foot in Mason County, which is where Havana and Manitou and Mason City and a couple of other San Jose. California kid had to learn that San Jose is not San Jose. And so we do planning for this whole area because we work as a region. We rise and fall as a region. You cannot have a depressed Peoria and expect to have an affluent Morton. Everybody actually works together. So we need to have that regional framework because that's what will get us all forward. So we take this regional lens when we look at all the work we do, and we do this in a planning document that's called the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. If any of you were at the big table events that we've had over the years, really trying to gather information from the community and from our stakeholders as to what needs to happen to be different, to make us different, to drive the economy forward. That's the planning side. It's not really a half, it's because it kind of is imbued in all of the work. But then what we would think of as more traditional economic development organization, and if this was the Rotary Club of Bloomington Normal, you would be a much taller man named Patrick Hoven, who's the head of the Bloomington Normal Economic Development Council, would be telling you all about the programmatic things that he does. On the programmatic side, we do in kind of 4 areas. Number 1 is business attraction. That's kind of my job in addition to being the CEO. How are we driving investment to our community from outside the community? And I can talk all about business attraction if you'd like, and it's the hardest job I've ever had. It's the most fun job I've ever had. You work an awful lot for maybe no outcome whatsoever, or when you think there's an outcome, something happens and it goes away, but it's been a very rewarding part of my job. We also, maybe more important than business attraction, although I think it's business attraction that people think we're supposed to just be exclusively doing, but it's actually business assistance. Most of the jobs in a community come from the companies you already have. And if you think about the trajectory of some of our largest employers, and then you think about how small they started at Caterpillar and OSF, this is why we want to support our existing businesses. There was just an announcement or a news story overnight about O'Brien Steel expanding. With Alcast, which is just kind of right around the corner here, they're doing, hopefully doing an expansion. Komatsu just invested $30 million in a new building. They have almost 1,000 employees at Komatsu. Caterpillar is actually bringing an engineering division here from the Aurora area. These are important that we support them, and we do that through a business outreach program where we're talking to businesses to really do 2 things. One is to understand where they may have a weakness that we can help, or a struggle that we can help, either help them fix or connect them to the resources to fix it, or there's an opportunity they'd like to take advantage of, and that we can kind of do the same thing. All sorts of companies. Caterpillar doesn't need my advice. I'm not worrying about saying, I bet Chris Setti knows what we can do with this gigantic billion-dollar multinational companies. We don't focus so much on the Caterpillars of the world, but we do work with a company like Alcast. The next area is workforce solutions, which is a newer area, and it's frankly one that I didn't ever think about when I was at the city of Peoria. But I have found, and any of you who run businesses will tell you that the biggest struggle they have is with personnel. Finding it, training it, keeping it. And if you are doing either business attraction or business expansion, that's going to be one of your biggest hurdles. And so on the business attraction side, the number one question we always are going to get is, do you have the right site or building for me to locate my company in your community? But the second question is always, what does your talent look like? And not just what your talent looks like today, but what does your talent pipeline look like? Because they are making a decision. You don't open a business in a community and think, well, we'll be here for 3 years and then move on. You're making a generational decision, and you need to understand that there's an underpinning of a system in the community. And so we work to help develop that system. And really to have, if you think of this, the workforce as two parts, a consumer and a producer. The producer side of that equation is our school system, our social service agencies, our community college, and universities. That's the system part, the producer part. The consumer part is the companies. But who's having that? Who's hosting that conversation? That the consumers are telling the producers what they need. So that's kind of the role that we play. Run a couple different programs. The last area is the kind of the hardest to explain sometimes, especially when I'm in a place like Peoria, because it's rural economic development. And if you can imagine, just outside of if I always said if Peoria had a beltway, what would be inside the beltway? But outside the beltway, there's a lot of small towns. And there are towns that don't have a professional economic development force. They may not even really have a professional staff. They might have a mayor who's very dedicated, but probably has a side gig, or that is his or her side gig. And they might have a clerk, village clerk or water clerk or something like that. So we do some outreach to them to help them take advantage of resources that might be available to them, help them answer questions. And because our smaller communities are part of our community. And in the same way, we have to think about the affluence of Morton and the kind of the persistent pockets of poverty that we may have in south side of Peoria or parts of Pekin. We also have to think about that we need our rural communities to also be strong. Because one of the great values that I have found in living in Peoria is that we talk about it as a 20-minute city, right? You can get anywhere you really want in 20 minutes. What I think the value to that is you can live almost any lifestyle you want in Peoria, in greater Peoria. You can live in an urban loft. You can live in an old home in the uplands like I do. You can live in a suburban area. You can live in a barn on a farm. But you're only 20 minutes away from all the other choices you didn't make. And so there's a real value. I lived in Chicago for years. I lived in Los Angeles for years. You know how far you have to drive out of Chicago to find your first commercial farm? Here, I probably get to it within 3 minutes to the hair, to the hair grass farms, right? If nothing else. So that's a real value, but we also need those rural communities to be places of vitality. One of the areas we've worked the greatest on in the last couple of years is actually on rural broadband connectivity, because there's nobody to do that work. Because these smaller, rural, and it's actually not even the rural communities, it's the spaces between the rural communities that have problems with internet connectivity. But if we learned anything during the pandemic is if you don't have the internet, you basically aren't alive. You can't go to school, you can't go to work, you can't order food, you can't participate in commerce if you're just stuck at your house, but then you don't have the internet. And it's sad and unfortunate, but it's a reality. So we've been working really hard to try to take advantage of the federal funding opportunities that are coming in that, and have been able to deliver a lot of monies that'll start to unveil themselves this summer through some federal and state programming. So that was 15 minutes maybe. And I'd love to, because I have to leave right about 1. But I'd love to, take questions. I will tell you I don't know if Julie is passing the mic around. So Bob's going to be my first question. I got to work with Bob a lot on a more professional basis. I happily retired back there. But I would just say, this region is worth fighting for, and I appreciate that all of you, when you're joining Rotary, you're actually fighting for your community in many ways. And I think we as a community have, this is writ large, this is not just a Peoria problem, it is a greater Peoria problem. We have a self-identity complex, and we need to talk about the great things of this community and why, why we all choose to live here. I can live anywhere. I said mostly grown children. by mostly grown means they still have my credit card. But they're out of the house, right? My wife has her PhD. We could probably go wherever we wanted if we wanted to, but we choose here, and I'm glad that all of you choose here as well. Bob, give me the toughest question you can ask.
Well, first of all, thanks so much for being here, and really good to see you. It's been a while. So I read, I think we all read about these data centers that communities are trying to attract or not approving. What's your experience with them? Are they job creators? I know it's a lot of real estate, but just your thoughts on it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting you ask, because it's certainly something I have learned more about data centers in the last 4 months than I ever thought I would ever know about one particular topic, because they seem to be sprouting up the opportunity of it. They are an amazing economic development opportunity, and I'm still wrapping my head around what role we as the EDC should play, because they're also super, super controversial. I do find it a bit ironic that the opposition to data centers organizes themselves on a platform that requires data centers. It's much like driving your F-150 to the Sierra Club meeting, but it is something that we are going to have to wrestle with as a community. I have not been directly involved in any of them. The one in Pekin, the folks came to Pekin because they had some land, and so I was only providing kind of technical support. We have to figure this out. The issue is prime for misinformation, and I will tell you that there is more misinformation out there about data centers than there is information. I appreciate the opposition. I don't particularly know if I'd want one in my backyard either. And that's a problem that we have as Americans, is the NIMBYism, right? Of not in my backyard. There's another one called NOTE, which is not over there either. Or banana, build absolutely nothing, absolutely nowhere, anytime. And I think there's another cave person, citizens against virtually everything. Right, so you've got all my acronyms out, but they are big opportunities, because they will pay a lot of property tax, which is good in a region, in a state in which we are all overtaxed. And so to have a high taxpayer that is a low user of local services is pretty attractive. I'm on the periphery of a project that's in Logan County, which is in Latham, which no one had probably never heard of. I had to look it up, Latham, kind of between Lincoln and Decatur. And it's a $5 billion project. If you were to add up all the building permits in Logan County over the last 30 years, I bet you it wouldn't come up to $5 billion. And so they are attractive for obvious reasons. There's a lot, and I could debate if you'd like. I don't think anybody's asking for the next 10 minutes to be what Chris Setti thinks about data centers. They are giant opportunities, and we have to figure that, and they need to go somewhere. So if I would leave you with the one bit of misinformation that bothers me the most is about the impact on the cost of electricity, which is, I understand people's concern, and I think I would have a general concern. But I would, if anybody thinks that a data center located in your community is what's causing your electricity prices to rise, I would just Google MISO, M-I-S-O, which is the Mid-Intercontinental Service Organization, MISO map. We don't generate and sell electricity like we do fried chicken or corned beef. We don't produce it and sell it locally. It's sold on a grid. That grid runs from Montreal to Louisiana, and we are in it. And if they happen anywhere, they impact us. There is not one hyperscale data center in the Ameren territory, but your bills have still risen. But people see how much their bills have risen, and they see that data centers are on the rise, and they conflate the two. There's lots of reasons your bills have risen. Lots of policy reasons, lots of just economic reasons. But it's hard to combat what people kind of think they see with their own eyes. So I don't have an answer, Bob. I think it should be a local decision by local administrators and local elected officials. I fear some of that's going to be taken away by the state and the federal government around siting, but they are attractive opportunities for communities to look at, and they got to go somewhere. They're not, maybe Elon will put them in space, but which is a true thing. Jim?
Okay, first of all, Chris, I just wanted to say thank you to you and your organization, because during COVID, you did a phenomenal job, and businesses such as mine that were struggled at the time, you had some great information out there and assistance. I appreciate that.
That was we don't work with local businesses until we had to. And
Right.
during COVID, we switched completely. We stopped worrying about business attraction. We just tried to help as many bars and restaurants as we could.
I enjoy hearing you on Monday mornings. I'm exercising, and you're always on, so keep doing that.
Thank you.
Another thing that's really exciting to me is working with hundreds of companies, and some of the ones that come in that are new. And just the last couple of weeks, a new company I started working with is Hike Medical.
Yep.
Do you know about them?
I do know about them. I'll tell you about Hike Medical. This is a really great company. There's a really great business owner in town. His name's Amit Banti, and Amit owns Comprehensive Prosthetics and Orthotics, who I worked with almost 20 years ago on a loan that he got from the city of Peoria, and now Amit owns like 28 prosthetics clinics across the country. But his son, who is like my oldest daughter, my oldest unemployed daughter's, peer, is like, owns this company. Don't tell Kate I said that. Anybody who knows my daughter Kate, I love her to death. And they have come up with a way of doing 3D printing of custom orthotics. You actually take your cell phone and you can, with their app, you can scan your foot, and then they will 3D print an orthotic insert in your shoe and ship them right to you. They have really great, and they've got a 3D printer farm in the old ATS, well, it's not the old, it's an old Caterpillar building that ATS is in, but that ATS is in the front of that building. They take about 60,000 square feet of that building. And they are a startup in many ways, except they're a cash flow. They're the best kind of startup. They're the kind of startup that doesn't need like a big infusion of cash, because they're already making things and selling things. And they have a contract with, they have a contract with OSF and Morton Industries, and I think Tesla or some company, like they've got some big, some big companies now. They use it as an employee incentive. But really, these are the kinds of companies that we like to hear about, right? You wouldn't know that they were there because they don't have a sign on the outside. They have a sign on the building, but you'd have to be lost to find the sign. But they're employing 30 or 40 people, and that's the kind of the great. Is it double that now? Yeah, I haven't. Adi and I were supposed to actually talk last week, and that got canceled, so I haven't seen it recently. But we have great things happening, in the Peoria area. Ma'am.
I have two questions. Both you can answer in one sentence.
That's a hard for an Italian, but
All
okay.
right. First of all, what does your wife think of shopping in Peoria? One sentence. Number two, what is your biggest accomplishment, the thing you're most proud of that you've done in your job?
I don't think my wife particularly thinks the shopping here is great, but she has found that the Amazon driver finds our house very easily. That one sentence?
Yep.
The greatest accomplishment, boy, this is from my previous job, the warehouse district. My fingerprints are all over the warehouse district, and I so loved working on those projects. I love walking through an old building with somebody who had a vision that wasn't mine, but I wanted to support. But I wrote a grant that got $10 million from the U.S. Department of Transportation to redo all the streets in the warehouse district. Now, the U.S. Secretary of Transportation at the moment was a guy named Ray LaHood. So I felt like it was my job playing alongside Michael Jordan not to trip him on the way to the basket. But somebody had to not trip Ray LaHood. And I wrote the grant that got him to say, yes, this is a valuable project. But when I go to the warehouse district and I sit, like Zion Coffee is where you'll find me. I go Monday mornings, I go on the Greg and Dan show. And even though my office is exactly next door to the Greg and Dan show, I always drive to Zion and I sit there and have a cup of coffee because it's a project I worked on. Does anybody remember what Zion Coffee was before it was Zion Coffee? It was a dirty bookstore. Yeah, Don Shaver's nodding his head, he knows. It's the great American redemption story. You could be anything you want to be in America, right? And you could go from rags to riches, and so I'm very proud of projects like that. Now, I've done some great stuff. I will say, nothing happens alone. It's the hardest part about economic development is that I'm not really, or my organization is not, it is not our credit alone, nor is it our blame alone. But when we see good things happening, it's a team effort. There's a medical device factory that's going to open. They're going to break ground in Pekin. It's called Epic Medical. They're from Singapore. We worked really hard on that project. They'll be breaking ground in April. Smallish, 50 to 100 jobs over time. And people are like, oh, that's great that you got that. I didn't get that. A team got it. I worked with people from Illinois DCEO and Intersect Illinois, and the city of Pekin was great. And Illinois American Water was great. And it really is a team effort. I just saw you like 2 hours ago.
Yes, so some of my Rotarian friends probably don't know, but I work for the University of Illinois College of Medicine here in Peoria. And you would assume at College of Medicine we educate medical students, but we also do a really robust work on clinical care. So many of the doctors that you have are actually our faculty, and that clinical revenue comes to us. We have a research footprint, and then we also have a lot of social things we do. So could you talk a little bit about the project that you're working on for us? Because it's a little different than some of the things that you've already highlighted as a benefit to what the university is trying to do.
I feel like Kelly's putting me on the spot. Like, was I paying attention in this meeting this morning when Dr. Ayer talked about campus expansion? But they want to build the 40,000 square foot facility?
120,000.
Oh, 40,000 per floor.
Yes.
It's I knew it was three stories.
Yes, that's right.
An expansion of their campus kind of along the, I think we'll call it the south side of their campus. All the streets here are weirdly organized to say what's left and right or up and down. And to have clinical space, especially, and the kind of the theme behind much of the clinical space is around women's health, generational women's health, really from teens through geriatric, but also create more space for research and classroom facilities. And the University of College of Medicine, Peoria is a great gem in our community, and it will have tremendous economic impact. Healthcare is our largest employer by sector in this region. As important as manufacturing is, and will always be important, because you can't have a healthcare system that doesn't actually have any patients. And you need other companies to employ people to pay for the services, right? So even the healthcare people will tell you that manufacturing is the key to this region, not healthcare. But so we're working with UEComp on doing an economic impact analysis, because we know that not only will it create some additional full-time jobs, but what's the price tag on it, we think?
100 million.
Okay, I was gonna say 90 million, but now I've got one number wrong already, so.
Dean Ayer keeps changing it.
Well,
Today
that
she
could
said 70 million in philanthropy, which is my part, and it was 50 before. Now
So
it's
everybody
70,
get your checkbooks out. But it's, a $70 million, $100 million project, which is actually kind of back to the data center thing. It's a lot of jobs that are involved in the construction of those things as well. So we want to understand what that economic impact is, but it's more than just the jobs that are created, and then the jobs that the jobs support other jobs in a community like healthcare or like retail or restaurants. But also the impact it would have. We are creating or trying to create a destination medical center here in the Peoria area, based largely around OSF, but also with the support of Carl and Springfield Clinic and BCDI and Illinois Cancer Care and all these others. But OSF has this vision that people will come here for the services, much in the way they go to Rochester or Cleveland or Barnes Jewish in St. Louis, that people will travel for these services. And so what UEComp is doing is a really incredible addition to their campus. But it isn't just about training medical students. It's really about providing next level services, both in this community and to surrounding communities. And I learned more about women's health in the last couple of, and I'm a father of 2 daughters, but I try to just do this usually. But it's really impressive what they're doing.
We thank you for the work that you're doing and helping us build that case for support.
Being in that meeting, David, reminded me I'm like overdue on my homework to Dr. Ayer, so. All right, hey, thank you, everyone.